Hey guys, I'm Hellhound, and I was just playing some Sega Genesis, as you can see, and figured I would go ahead and do a quick movie review. You know, why not, right? Haven't done one in a few days. Last time you saw me, I gave a film day a little tribute to the late Tobe Hooper, one of my favorite horror directors, who I consider like the big four of horror directors, along with John Carpenter, Wes Craven, and George A. Romero. Tobe Hooper was definitely one of them, and very sad that only John Carpenter remains. The other three are gone. Now with Hooper, now that he's passed on, it only leaves Carpenter. It's very unfortunate. You know, I love their films. It made a huge impact on me. And so check that video if you haven't already. I also counted down my top 5 Tobe Hooper films. I forgot to mention some of his other work, like Life Force. That was a really good movie. I forgot to mention that in my video. So sorry about that. But yeah, anyway, rest in peace, Tobe Hooper, once again. And I figured I'd go ahead and review Return of the Living Dead 3. Since I already reviewed the first two. And like, as you know, Return of the Living Dead from 1985 and directed by Dan O'Bannon is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's in my top 5. And the thing about this movie is I consider this, along with Fright Night and Re-Animator, the holy trinity. Return of the Living Dead, Fright Night, and Re-Animator. Kind of the holy trinity of fun, entertaining, cheesy 80s movies that are just a blast to watch. They all came out in 1985. They all feature over-the-top gore and great humor and really, really fun scenes. You know, I just love those 3 movies. I feel like they're just like untouchable, and I really wish they'd bring back that feel with more modern-day horror. I wish they'd bring back the fun. You know, the campy 80s vibe, without making it too like cheap and you know, and goofy. Like I feel like they've tried to do that a few times, but it like didn't really work right. I don't know. I guess these films are just a product of their time. But yeah, Return of the Living Dead, Fright Night, Re-Animator. You can't go wrong with those. If you haven't seen them, check them out. But anyway, I've already reviewed Return of the Living Dead. I've talked about it in depth. I've talked about it in various videos. I reviewed Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which it's a decent sequel, but honestly, when comparison to the original, it falls very flat. It's not nearly as good as the first movie. It can't hold a candle to it. It's still pretty good in its own right, but it kind of just feels like a cheap, watered down rehash. And like the kid's the main character. It feels like a Disney version of the first film, and lacks the heart. There's no, you know, the humor wasn't nearly as clever. The scares weren't nearly as well done. It just wasn't as effective. It wasn't as well done at all. I consider it an inferior sequel, but it probably is the best out of the series, other than the first movie. Which is unfortunate, because I'd love for there to have been a big series where they all felt like the first movie. But anyway, then we got Return of the Living Dead 3. Now, the thing about this movie, it's interesting that it takes a completely different direction from the first two. Where the first two were like straightforward zombie films and featured a very similar premise with the chemical, the trioxin 2,4,5 getting unleashed and into a cemetery and having the undead reanimate and feed on people's brains. This movie took it told a completely different story. Pretty much the only thing in common with this one and the others is it does feature that same chemical gas, the trioxin 2,4,5, which I just mentioned. This is more like a horror version of like the Romeo and Juliet story or something. It's like or maybe Romeo and Ghouliet, pardon my Crypt Keeper pun. Yeah, this is more like a love story, more like a romance horror film. Yeah, she's to die for. Yeah, Mindy Clark and J. Trevor Edmond are the stars. Edmond was also in Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, and Mindy Clark's been in several horror movies. But yeah, basically, they're madly in love. They're trying to get married. Yeah, he's kind of a rebellious type. He's got like longish hair, a leather jacket. He rides a motorcycle. He's that type of person. Pretty cool character. He wasn't a total dick like he was in Pumpkinhead 2. He's actually pretty sympathetic here, and I really felt for him. Yeah, they're madly in love. His father works for a corrupt company which manufactures the trioxin 2,4,5 and is using it to try to reanimate the dead and make them into an army, like to be used in the military to fight wars, which is an interesting concept, and I'm kind of glad they introduced that idea. It was pretty interesting. And so, like, some of their test subjects, some of the zombies here there's not very many. It's not like a zombie movie, like I said, not as straightforward with like a bunch of the undead causing chaos. Some of the zombies are very creative and very creepy looking. There's one that's like almost has like 2 heads, like it's the skin's ripped off side of its head. It's like a skeleton. Then there's one that's got all this metal and armor and like all these experiments, all these superhuman zombies that they've made to, in order to fight wars are pretty interesting. That was an interesting concept. They're going to sell it to the military, I guess, that chemical army of zombies. But anyway, yeah, his girlfriend, played by Mindy Clark, is killed in a motorcycle accident. And after, discovering what his father does for a living and being freaked out, he uses the chemical to bring her back to life. And pretty soon she discovers that she has to feast on human flesh, brains, and also she gets really into self-mutilation. She puts like glass shards and needles and knives and stuff through her skin. And yeah, just look at that. Yeah, pretty cool. And so he's just trying to take care of her. He doesn't want to give up. He does not want to give up on her. He doesn't want to say she's dead, it's over with. He wants to do whatever it takes. They even hide out in the sewer. She has to eat people. Some other zombies are created. Some really, really grotesque, horrifying looking zombies in the movie. Very creative. This was a 90s movie. The 80s were over. I think this came out in 93. Sometime in the early 90s. I could be wrong. But, the 80s were over, and you could definitely tell with this movie. And it's really nothing like the sequels. I think they only put the Return of the Living Dead title on it just so people would see it. Just to sell tickets and then eventually, sell copies when it came to home video. But yeah, as I said, J. Trevor Edmonds a good lead character, and I really felt for him. I felt really bad for him and what he went through. He's definitely in love with her, and true love conquers all, I guess, or whatever, even after she's dead. And the fact that he wants to keep trying, he never gives up. He's not going to give up on her. He's going to keep doing these horrible things just to keep her alive. And then the plot, as I said, with the military and the chemical trying to create zombies and manufacture soldiers, like super soldiers for the army. I think that was an interesting concept, and they actually built upon that in these sequels, Return of the Living Dead Necropolis and Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave, Part 4 and 5, which these movies have nothing to do with the first one. They're very inferior. It's like they didn't even watch the movies. They slapped the title on here to make a quick buck. These are terrible. Avoid them at all costs. As I said, they did continue that story set up by this with the military, but other than that, these are irredeemable pieces of trash. Avoid them. I'd love to have seen a proper Return of the Living Dead sequel that felt like the first one. But this is the last of the watchable ones. And as I said, this isn't a great movie. It might be a little more well-made and well-written than Part 2, but I still have more respect for the second film because it feels more like the first film, even though it is kind of a cheap rehash, which wasn't as good. James Karen and Tom Matthews come back and playing different characters, and they really tried to just make the same movie again. It feels more like his remake. With this movie, they did do something different, so I appreciate it for that. I admire it, for that. But at the same time, I don't know. It just doesn't really feel enough like a Return of the Living Dead movie to me. I'd love to see Revenge of the Living Dead, which was the late Don Calfa, rest in peace, who played Ernie in the first movie. That was his idea. It was going to be a direct continuation of the first film, and it was going to be awesome, man. It was such a good idea. I think there's a graphic novel in the works and all this other stuff, and I would love to see them make that into a movie. But anyway, that's another video. I mentioned that a lot in my Rest in Peace Don Calfa episode. But yeah, as I said, this doesn't live up to the original at all, and as I said, it might be a more interesting story than Part 2, but I still do prefer Part 2 because it feels like an actual sequel, despite mostly inferior one. Very interesting zombie designs, interesting makeup jobs and special effects. Yeah, that guy's in a metal brace and a body brace, got metal all over him. They were going to sell these things to the military, and shit, there's no way we would lose in a war with these things fighting for us with these things. Because remember, the zombies in here can't be killed. They can be chopped up into little pieces, and they still come after you. You gotta burn them until they're nothing but ashes, and that's the only way to kill them. Something they forgot in stupid 4 and 5, which were just, I don't even know why I mentioned them here. Better just pretend they don't exist, which is what I'm going to do. I don't even know why I own those stupid things. I guess I was expecting something more. This is the last good movie in the Return of the Living Dead 3 series. Don't expect to see a review of the 4th and 5th films, because I don't even remember them enough to do it, and I don't even care enough. Well, here's my review. I'll level with you. Here's my review of 4 and 5. They suck. Okay, that's it. Back to Return of the Living Dead 3. The last good entry, although it does take a different direction. It doesn't really feel like a true sequel, other than the trioxin 245 and the zombies, and that's about it. It doesn't even reference the events of the first 2 movies, really. And if it does, it's very minor. J. Trevor Edmonds played a good main character. I'd like to see him in more movies. He showed a lot of promise. I think he had potential, and splatterfest. It's really gory. You know, and the chain reaction caused by the living dead, eating brains and stuff, and feeling for his character and wanting to keep his girlfriend alive. Mindy Clark does a great job too. She's really scary and really creepy when she gets her full zombie get up, and I mean, yeah, there she is. I mean, I thought that was pretty well done. So it's definitely got some elements to enjoy. There's definitely a lot to enjoy here, but as I said, I kind of enjoy it more as a standalone movie than as a sequel to Return of the Living Dead. They could have called it something else. I don't know, Romeo and Juliet, like I said. I don't know, or do something. I don't know, something like that. And you know, it would, you know, it would have been just as good, you know. It really doesn't work as a Return of the Living Dead movie, as I said. But again, it's kind of interesting, you know, that they took a different direction, didn't try to rehash the film like the second film did. And I do admire their valiant effort. There was a good movie here. It, you know, was a good concept. Yeah, very, very interesting zombie designs, and you know, the whole he's trying to bring her back thing, and doesn't want to give up on her. I thought that was kind of an interesting storyline. And again, I did feel for his character. I felt a lot of sympathy. He was a very strong lead. It has a pretty disturbing, well, very depressing ending. And the ending's kind of a downer, too. So, which is fitting for a movie like this. I guess I won't give it away. You can probably guess what happens. I mean, it's not like a huge shocker or anything. But yeah, overall, I'd recommend Return of the Living Dead 3. Maybe not quite as a Return of the Living Dead sequel. If you want to see a continuation of that story, it's sadly probably never going to happen. The closest we have is this one. And, you know, even that doesn't do it justice. So, but yeah, check out this movie anyway. I think you have a good time. It has a lot of good stuff to offer. It's not a great movie by any means, but still good. You know, it's probably one of the better, you know, 90s horror movies. You know, early 90s. The 80s was clearly over. They couldn't recapture that magic, but I think this one does. I think this one does a sufficient job. I think it's adequate enough to call it a good, straight up decent horror movie with a good story. It's taken very seriously too. Whereas the first two films were like had a lot of humor. They were mostly funny horror comedies. This one's like a lot more serious, a lot more dark, a little more gritty, a little more bleak. Which can definitely be a good thing. Again, nothing will ever come near this masterpiece. Which, you know, as I said, along with Fright Night and Re-Animator, nothing can touch that holy trinity. But what are you gonna do? They'll never recapture that magic again. So I think this does an adequate job at being its own movie. Alright, well, I'm starting to repeat myself now, so I guess that just about does it. Thank you guys for watching. That completes all my reviews of the Return of the Living Dead trilogy. I read all 3 of them now, so now we can get back to other things. Oh yeah. And yeah, I did say trilogy. I don't count the other 2 because they suck. In fact, I'm just going to toss them in the garbage after I finish this video, probably. Yeah. After this, nothing else matters. Just like the Metallica song. Alright guys, well, if you haven't seen Return of the Living Dead or Fright Night or Re-Animator yet, go do that right now as soon as you close up this video. And I recommend this one as well, so check it out. Alright guys, I'm Hellhound, and until next time.